Item 3.2 is a public hearing to review the 2040 Comprehensive Plan and consider the approval of an ordinance introduced by the Planning Department recommending the adoption of the plan.
If there is no objection, I will open the public hearing. Would anybody like to speak in the public hearing? Director Sark?
Mayor and councilors, thank you. We are finally here, a year and a month later. We are, I think, presenting a very, very good plan to move forward on here. I am going to encourage that we adopt. It's been reviewed. We had an excellent steering committee, as you know. You're going to hear a little bit more about it. Excellent steering committee. Put a few changes in at the Plan Commission level last month or a couple of months ago and are forwarding to you. So, Mayor, how would you like to handle Stephanie? Would you like to do it after? Or?
It's a public hearing, so I'm going to invite Stephanie Falkers. I don't know how to describe your title, but we've been calling you our consultant and our guide through the comprehensive plan. So Stephanie Falkers was hired as a consultant to help us write the comprehensive plan. But while I'm introducing her, I want to mention that she did not author the comprehensive plan. The people of Superior and the comprehensive plan steering committee did. So Ms. Falkers, please.
Thank you, Mayor Payne. I'm going to share my screen and just 1 second here as I get pulled up. But my title actually was just the project manager for the consultant team. So it was my pleasure, my team's pleasure, to really be a part of this process. I'm not sharing my correct screen. Hold on. 1 second here. My apologies here. See if this works. Nope, it's still showing. Are you guys seeing the PowerPoint or?
I see it. It's up in.
Okay, I must have something wrong on my side, but if you can see it, then that's great. We'll keep moving forward.
Click on the pen on the PowerPoint.
Okay, my apologies. There we go. Now I've got it. So our agenda here quickly, and I'll move through this, but with hitting at the high points, knowing that you guys have a lot on your agenda here this evening. But we'll start with a quick thank you, talk about what the comprehensive plan is, what our process was, how everyone can use this plan, and a little bit we'll breeze through the different sections of the plan, and then really talk about next steps and things moving forward. So I would be amiss if I didn't stop and give a big thank you to everyone that was a part of this process. It really was a big pleasure for myself and my team to work with all of you through this process. This is a really exciting plan and something that you should all really be proud of. And so we wanted to make sure to pause and thank staff, Jason, Allison, and the team for their leadership through this process. The steering committee, who was great to work with. Those of you on the council that were members of that. We had Brian from the Planning Commission, Deanna, who just spoke as a part of that. This was a team that really worked together to help drive solutions, and can be really proud of this plan as well. And then, of course, agency partners that helped us through data collection and the creation of objectives, but then really the public as well. A lot of this, and I'll talk about it in the presentation, comes from the input from the public. And so your participation in this process made this plan what it is, and you should be really proud of that as well. So what is a comprehensive plan? This slide gets into some of the state statute details, but we are required as a community to have a comprehensive plan that's updated every 10 years. And it's really the community's guide to mapping, subdivision, zoning ordinances, and things like that. And that's where it's required out of state statute. But it needs to create that 20-year vision, have 9 required plan elements, and be updated every 10 years. All of those things that you've been complying with for some time, and really set that framework for this planning process. But more specifically, we wanted to make sure that this was a planning process that was built from community input, that it defined actionable goals and implementation actions, we created an understandable and accessible plan. So no matter who is looking at this document, that they can find something they connect with. And then it also encourages action towards that shared vision, toward those goals that we worked together to set through this planning process. And what was our process overall throughout? I won't get into the details of this, but really we had 5 primary steps that we went through. And more specifically and importantly, community engagement was a big component of this process. So not only was our steering committee heavily involved, meeting 5 or 6 times through this process, each of our steps along the way had some form of community engagement. So from our early stages of understanding existing conditions and issues and opportunities, all the way through the plan development, we were coordinating and communicating with the public. I think one big highlight of this process was the early community survey, where we had nearly 500 community members responding and collaborating on issues and opportunities that really set forward the vision and key themes that are identified through this document. So how do you use this plan? Hopefully we will be adopted and this will be your new guiding document for the community, but really how is it then used? And the intent here is that it's not meant just as a tool for you as the council or staff. It's meant for everyone, our partners. You can include Deanna, our public, things of that nature. So in 4 kind of buckets here, we have inform official mapping, subdivision, and zoning actions. That's required by state statute. That's just part of our normal process. But this plan can also be used to inform investment and implementation actions. It can be used to reference issues and opportunities identified through public engagement. So in a couple years from now, if you're kind of wondering why we have a policy or something like that, this document can be reviewed back to understand the input that we received. And it can also be used to review best practices and recommendations to implementation. So as we go through and you're taking action on one of the implementation actions that are identified in this plan, you can also look back and see why we recommended what we did and some tools to help you achieve that implementation. So in terms of the sections that are required for us, or that are included within the plan, this does hit on our 9 required plan elements. And I'll breeze quickly through what each of these sections does include. But the first 9 icons here on this slide are those items that are required by state statute. So everything from housing to economic development and implementation. This comprehensive plan update did include 2 additional plan elements that are not required by state statute but are very important to the community of Superior, which include coastal resources and hazard mitigation. So this is an exciting plan where we're emphasizing the importance of those components within the community and getting them included in this comprehensive vision for Superior. So what does each of these sections include? Again, I'm going to hit on this at a high level, and hopefully you've all had the opportunity to take a look. But of course, we start with section 1, our introduction. This is essentially our executive summary, what's included in the plan, how was it used. A pretty self-explanatory section from that standpoint. Section 2 starts off our required plan elements with our issues and opportunities. And this is really a key chapter or section if you're trying to understand the community's input and what the community wants to see out of the future of Superior. The key themes that are shown here on this slide are highlighted throughout this section. And this is really the key points of public engagement and really set our course moving forward for the direction and goals that we had within the community. I'll note the first key theme is residents value connection and access to nature. This was overwhelmingly a comment that we heard throughout a lot of the process, that people want to be able to connect with the resources that Superior has to provide and also to connect with each other. This section also includes our overall plan goals. So here we have 5 goal statements that apply to the plan as a whole, but this section is also connected to the specific plan element goals that are included within each plan element. So then that gets us into our systems or our plan elements as well. So we start with housing, and again, I'll go a pretty high level, but what the graphic we have shown here is the kind of cover page for each section, and it's really intended to be a summary of what some existing conditions are today, what the goal statements are specific to that plan element, and then what's more included in the document or in this section as well. So for example, housing had 5 goals here. I won't read through them specifically, but then we highlighted some of the things that are identified throughout the housing section. A big piece of what we heard in housing is access. whether that's affordability, style of housing, amenities of housing, having access to housing. And so there's a lot of that content that is built from improving that access for the community. Transportation is our next section, and really this is the movement of goods and people by any mode of transportation. So we wanted to make sure we were highlighting vehicular, freight, bike, ped, all of those different forms of transportation. We had 5 goals here, and really highlighted some of the partnerships that we have, and then also highlighted the great active transportation plan that really serves as your guiding document for that multimodal component of transportation. Utilities and community facilities, section 5. This highlights not only some of the systems that the city controls in terms of our utilities, but other community facilities and partnerships that contribute to the quality of life for our community. For example, our school district, huge part of a need for our community members, and so wanting to make sure we're highlighting opportunities to partner from that standpoint. Section 6 is a mouthful, which is our agricultural, natural, cultural, and recreational resources. I will note that this section adds recreation as part of the overall element. That isn't required per state statutes, but as I noted, connections to the outdoors was really emphasized through public engagement, so we wanted to make sure that it had its space in this comprehensive plan as well. So highlighting a lot of the great things, and these are a lot of the elements that contribute to a high quality of life for our residents. So wanting to make sure we're looking at ways to preserve and enhance these variety of resources. Section 7 is economic development, and that's really where we earn our money and where we spend our money within the community. So looking at different opportunities for economic development, focusing on some of the great work that's already been done in the community and capitalizing on those opportunities as well. Section 8 is our intergovernmental cooperation, or really highlighting our partners that help us get work done. And so this chapter highlights a lot of our existing partnerships that we have within the community and highlighting opportunities to further enhance or utilize those partnerships to help us achieve the vision that we've set forth for 2040. I will note that equity and justice in planning was added and highlighted really through our steering committee as important for the community, so that's also identified within this section. And then we get to land use, which is really the core component of why a community has a comprehensive plan. And this is really setting our course for how we manage growth and development within the community moving forward. So things you're probably used to seeing, like our existing and future land use plan, are included in here. We've also identified a few opportunity areas, including downtown, the university area, some new focus on residential. And this is really our way to tie that land use component into some of these overall goals that we had. For example, medium density residential is kind of a focus within this chapter, looking at housing types that aren't our single family home or our apartment, but that space in between, and how we can not only bring that into our housing section, but employ that through development regulations in the land use chapter. Then we get into our new additions of sections with a coastal resources and hazard mitigation. If you've read the plan, you'll notice that these chapters take a little different flavor in terms of how they're structured, and that's because they are new additions to the plan. So we wanted to make sure we highlighted the resources that are available right now, what this chapter includes, and then also some opportunities to help us achieve our goals for coastal resources. And the same piece for section 11 with hazard mitigation. The existing hazard mitigation plan is, of course, a big component of this chapter as well. And then finally, that gets us to section 12, which is our implementation. This is really the exciting part and the work that you're going to start once this plan is adopted in terms of the actions that the city can take to achieve the goals that we set forth with the community. And so there's overall plan goals, which are shown here on the screen, but there are also implementation actions identified within each of the sections. And here we outline strategies and actions that the city can take in an effort to meet those goals, the timeline in which we've suggested that they be done and relate to each other, and then also identifying a lead department within the city and supporting agencies to really help get the job done. So now where are we at? We've kind of walked through that overview of the plan itself, but wanted to walk you through the process that we've had in the last few months here. This plan did go through review with staff and the steering committee, making sure that we included the elements that we needed. It did go out for public review and comment, and we heard different things and got some suggestions for some changes we could make within the plan. It did go to the Plan Commission for a public hearing, and we discussed some of those suggested changes, and those changes were made in the version that was provided and updated today. And so then we are here at the public hearing. I won't go into great detail, but we did hear some public comments on a variety of the different sections. A lot of it was highlighting some of the direction that we're already headed in terms of what was included there. And I won't read through these in great detail as these changes were made in the version that you were received, but we just made a couple of updates regarding statement on rental inspections, making sure that the city is emphasized as the lead implementer of the active transportation plan, updates to the cultural resources and intergovernmental cooperation section regarding First Nations and partnerships with the community. There were a few grammatical errors that were updated, and then making sure that we addressed the 2040 SSAP plan appropriately. And with that, that's my quick presentation and overview there, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have for me.
Are there any questions for Stephanie, Mr. Cirque, or myself? Or would anybody else like to speak in the public hearing? Would anybody else like to speak in the public hearing? Would anybody else like to speak to the 2040 comprehensive plan? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing and adopt ordinance 22-4266.
So moved.
The motion is by Councilor Bender. Is there a second? Second. The second is by Councilor Ledeen. Discussion on approval of the ordinance. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no.
Aye.
The motion carries.